Welcome to the Self-Help Coaching Podcast, where insights, attitudes, and methods for success get illuminated. Learn what leaders and change workers have done and are doing now to create magnificent futures. We interview great guests who inspire you to overcome obstacles and achieve your goals. Be sure you visit our website at self-helpcoaching.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now, just relax as you listen. You can do something else, but be ready to make an important note. And let's get started.
The title of this interview is Suicide, the Secret of My Success, Deadman Talking. We're going to be talking about suicide prevention as a workplace health and safety issue, and landing and leveraging a TEDx talk. Our guest has 7 of them. And who is this guest? Frank King.
8.
Who is Frank? Who is Frank King? He is a suicide prevention speaker and a writer for The Tonight Show for 20 years. Mm-hmm. He's fought a lifetime battle with depression and chronic suicidality, turning that long, dark journey into 7 TEDx talks and insights on mental health awareness, depression, and suicide running his family. He's thought about killing himself more times than he can count, and we got something in common there. Though thankfully, I wasn't as common with me as it was with you. He uses his life lessons to start the conversation, giving people permission to give voice to their feelings and experiences. He believes that where there is humor, there is hope. Boy, you're speaking my language there. Where there is laughter, there is life. Nobody dies laughing. I love that. Welcome, Frank.
Thank you very much. By the way, now 8 TEDx talks. I got to update my bio.
Wow, that is fantastic. 8. And that really trumps my 0. But one day, and who knows, with the information you've got, maybe that day will come sooner.
Of course it will.
I love it. Great stuff. Frank, we're going to get into these our topics. But, I like to start off with the dark side. I'm a recovering addict, clean and sober a long time now. But in the 90s, I once put a gun to my head, put a round in the chamber, finger trembling on the trigger, the muzzle resting on the temple of my forehead, crying and standing naked. I was in much better shape then, if you're going to picture it, in front of a full-length mirror, crying. And I said to God, and excuse my language here, I'm just going to tell you, just to reenact it accurately. I said, God, is there anything else before I pull this fucking trigger? And I'm not saying I heard the voice of God, but something told me to put that gun down. I put it down. I laid in bed for 3 days, clicking not my heels, but I kept my heels together, clicking the balls of my feet, my toes together for 3 days, phone ringing off the hook. Finally, my mother came over and said, "What's going on? Nobody get a hold of you." And I said those magic words that I never said before. "Mom, I need help." Those words began the journey that I'm on right now. So there's a little anecdote for me, Frank. Welcome.
Well, as my mother would say, on that happy note,
I live. It is happy. I live, and I'm doing great, and I've learned so much. So, all right, before we get into we can get into the suicide stuff now, but I can just ask you a question.
You're driving the bus, man. You asked.
All right. You know what? And just because I lost my license due to several DUIs, which is not true. I only lost it once, and that was 30 years ago. Right. 1 DUI. I will drive carefully now and with consideration, which is true. So you are a comedian and comedy writer, and you talk about depression and suicide. How does that work?
Well, if you think about it, the world's first comedians were the court jesters. Their job is to speak truth to power on behalf of the powerless with humor. I believe I speak truth to the power of mental illness on behalf of those often powerless in its grip. And as you pointed out, I believe with there's humor, there's hope. Where there's laughter, there's life, that nobody dies laughing. And depression and suicide run in my family. It's called Generational Depression and Suicide. My grandmother died by suicide. My mother found her. My great aunt died by suicide. My mother and I found her. I was 4 years old. I screamed for days. And yeah, it was horror movie horrible. I mean, it was, when people hear it, they're just, oh my God. And I myself came close enough to die by suicide in April of 2010, at the height of the recession after a Chapter 7 bankruptcy in which my wife and I lost everything we'd worked for in 25 years. But I can tell you what the barrel of my gun tastes like. Spoiler alert, I did not pull the trigger.
We got the same ending.
Yes, a friend of mine came up after a keynote not long ago, goes, hey man, I can't, didn't pull the trigger. I go, hey man, could you try to sound slightly less disappointed? Yeah, so I didn't. And then I had been doing stand-up comedy. One of the reasons that we were broke was the last session conference, convention business dropped off 80%. And when it came back, they said, Frank, listen, we love you. We can't pay you that kind of money anymore just to be funny. Because I've been a comedian, corporate comedian for the last, at that point, 15 years. And we have to teach our audience something, teach them something. So what in the hell do I have to teach anybody? So I picked up a book by a friend of mine named Judy Carter. It's called The Message of You, Turn Your Life into a Money-Making Speaking Career. Went into it thinking I got nothing. Then I realized about halfway through, given my personal mental health issues and near suicide and my family, which is nuttier than a squirrel turd, that I could take some suicide prevention training, get some certification, and keynote on suicide prevention. And the other hurdle was I've been a comic for 30 years. So how do I convince meeting planners and speakers bureaus that I can do something serious? I thought I'll do a TEDx talk. So I applied for one in Vancouver, BC, got lucky on the first try, got booked, and I did a suicide prevention speech. And I came out on stage as depressed and suicidal. Nobody knew that. My friends, my family, my wife, nobody had any idea how close I'd come to killing myself. My wife's about to push play on YouTube. When the TED talk went up, I said, stop. I need to tell you about half a dozen things you don't know about me that I don't want you to learn for the first time in that video. So, and then got invited to 2 more TEDs from that. They said, do you have any more mental health topics? Oh yeah. And then I applied for my 4th and 5th. My 5th was my favorite, the only one I've ever gotten a standing ovation for. Mental health and the orgasm, treat your depression single-handedly. I love my iPhone, but it's my second favorite handheld device. And got a standing ovation. And then I did a virtual one for number 7 in the pandemic. And then because I've got an amazing LinkedIn marketing company I work with, a TEDx in India found me on LinkedIn. And they said, because I have a couple of TEDx's on mental with benefits, the evolutionary advantages of mental illness, you know, the positive side of mental illness. They said, we've never heard anybody say anything positive out of mental illness. And I believe that I'm not broken. I think I was made this way. My depression, thoughts of suicide, just the flip side of my creativity, imagination, comedic ability, same brain, same wiring. And so they said, you know, if you'll do TED for us on the, you know, positive side of a variety of mental illnesses, then you're on. All right. So I finished a rough draft yesterday.
Wow, that's incredible. And I mean, even though your statement was peppered with humor and comedy, you know, I have to say that, I mean, it's a cliche that laughter is the best medicine, but I have to say that, you know, humor to me is one of my greatest values.
Yeah.
And I find automatically, because I've conditioned myself, I guess, to always find a funny angle to everything. I don't care what it is. I mean, I remember I being at my sister's wake. All right.
Oh my God.
All right. And I'm over there with some guys on the side. Oh, I got cats here too, by the way, Frank. I got cats here. I got one over here. I love it. I got one making noise over here. They're all rescues. Got 5 rescues running around here. One just died recently. I had 6. I'm about to capture another one. Anyway, I'm over there on the side of the wake, joking with some friends that I'm gonna, you know, my sister was my best friend. I'm gonna knock over the coffin just, because she would love it. And it was stopping me. I was walking towards the coffin, I just find a funny angle, not to be a dick. So people will think I'm a dick. Oh, why are you gonna be a dick? I'm not even being a dick. I'm just, offering some levity. Just, we don't have to be so morose about things or so serious about things. Yeah, you want to have some appropriateness, but then again, comedy is built on being inappropriate. But not all. You don't want to be a dick. But I find it to laugh, or at least to think with that humor. I don't have to make the joke, but for me to think of the joke helps me.
Yeah, that's another. Not everybody's brain works that way. To be able to process it. I tell people I can teach you to write stand up and perform stand up. I cannot teach you to process the incoming information the way my brain does.
Yeah.
In my TEDx, there's humor. I mean, it's dark, but I talk about how I went to TED.com to see how other people handle the topic of suicide, figuring that there'd be dozens of talks on, if not more, on suicide. And I found 3 talks on suicide. So I said to the audience, well, duh, if you're really good at suicide, you're not going to be recording a TED talk. And then later on, I talk about how my grandmother died using a gas stove and my great aunt died using an old Loctite refrigerator. What is it with my family and major appliances? Every time I drive past Sears, I tear up. So, just to give them, because the thing is, in a topic that dark, you can give them a little comic relief along the way, funny, true anecdotes from your life, then, it's much easier to digest the rest of it.
Absolutely. I think that a very common malady, extremely common, is this disease of taking ourselves too seriously. And when you suffer from it, when you don't laugh or can't laugh, or you found that you haven't laughed in perhaps too long. And I would suggest that look for the funny side, look for the funny angle, make a self-deprecating observation, something. Life is not this serious. We're all going out.
Yeah.
We're all going out. Make a laugh for yourself or for others. They'll appreciate it as long as it's not too, offensive, especially these days. Right. It's invaluable.
I did a show for Chase, JP Morgan Chase, hired by Jamie Dimon to MC an event. And he said, Frank, here's what's going to happen. You're going to come out, you're going to MC, you're going to do some of your stand up. Then you're going to introduce me. And he said, then you're going to make fun of me. He said, yes, I want you to take a shot at me on stage in front of all the rank and file. I said, because it'll humanize me. And so he said, and I'll take it well. And they may not realize, but they appreciate it. So he comes out and he's wearing a salmon colored shirt. And I looked at him and I said, like a golf shirt. I go, hey, Jamie, that's a good looking shirt. Does that by chance come in a man style? Audience explodes. And of course, they loved him to death after that. So, that's the power of humor and the power of letting me take a shot at him in front of them. It always worries me when a CEO or somebody in the C-suite does not have a sense of humor, or I can't poke a little fun.
Yeah.
I don't think that's healthy.
I again, mentioning self-deprecation, I'll do that as a matter of strategy.
Yeah.
I do that. I take myself down. People loosen up a little bit in a number of dynamics. It's very powerful. And everyone gets it. Everyone gets it, right?
Yeah, I open every comedy show with some self-deprecating. I'm losing my hair, I'm on a high fiber diet because I got high cholesterol. I should never have married my first wife. We had nothing in common, but you know what they say, opposites attract. She was pregnant, I wasn't. Oh. So it's always, because you're up on a stage, you're above them physically. And if you do some self-deprecating humor and point out you're just an average guy,
right,
then you can connect.
Absolutely. Great stuff. Let's take a moment to hear from our sponsor and we'll come right back with the funny Frank King. And then we're going to get into some of the less funny things. I've already touched on suicide, but I really want to get deep into this suicide stuff, Frank. All right. Well, we'll come right back.
This episode of Self-Help Coaching is brought to you by Proficio. When people learn something, they want to use it. so it has real value. And the best teacher is experienced. Visit www.perficio.io. That's PERFICIO.io, where Perficio will have you taking action with what you're learning immediately. You'll be closer to your goals before you even realize it.
You're listening to the Self-Help Coaching Podcast with me, your host, Tony Petrozza. We're having a fantastic conversation with Frank King. And he wrote for the Today Show. He is a suicide prevention expert or speaker. Before I even get into the suicide stuff, you gave a bunch of your bio, which was really incredible. And we'll get into that in a moment. But I would like to. I'm interested a little bit about the certifications you got in mental health. How did you become interested to do that, and what were the ones you got?
Well, I knew I could keynote if I had something to share. If I could teach the audience, it's learning objectives, and they sound like this. After they hear him speak, the audience will be able to, or when Frank King speaks, the audience will learn how to. So I needed something for them to take away. And I teach them the signs and symptoms of depression and thoughts of suicide, because 8 out of 10 people who are suicidal are ambivalent. 9 out of 10 give hints in the last week leading up to an attempt, which means the vast majority who want to be saved can be saved if you know what to look and listen for and how to respond. So that's what I teach them. And I took a course called QPR, Question, Persuade, Refer. And I'm a train the trainer in QPR. Then something called Mental Health First Aid. I'm a train the trainer in Mental Health First Aid. And then the first one I took was actually called Working Mind, Suicide Prevention as a Workplace Health and Safety Issue. And the reason that's important is because 80% of suicides are people 18 to 65. And where are people 18 to 65 every day? At work. So, and then when I began speaking, I selected 6 of the top 10 at-risk occupations for suicides. The occupations that had the highest rate, for example, construction leads the league. 1,000 people roughly every year in construction from accident. 5,000 die from suicide. You're 5 times more likely to jump off the building than fall off.
Shocking.
Yes, and a need. And I tell my speakers that I train, if your keynote, I don't care how good it is, if you're not addressing a pain point or solving a problem, nobody's going to book it. And you got to figure out who your ideal clients are. Who's the 5 or 6 client groups that really need to hear what you have to say and willing to pay for it.
Wow, you're talking about TEDx talk now, or keynote.
Guess what?
Or keynote.
Most of my clients are speakers. They either want to start a career with a TEDx or up their game. And all the TEDx companies, coaching companies I'm aware of, once you get the TED, they're done. But I have another half of the program, which is speaker marketing mentoring. I get them turnkey ready to be booked by an event planner or a meeting planner or a speakers bureau. In other words, they've got a sizzle reel, a demo video. They've got a one-pager. They've got a website strictly for speaking so that everything looks professional. So when a meeting planner arrives there at their website, say, that's all they see is that they speak on this topic. And I try to encourage them, as they say in speaking, to pick a lane. Starting in January 1st, 2018, all I did from that point forward was suicide prevention speaking. I've got a networking speech and a motivational speech. I don't market those anymore. I just market suicide prevention. That's my lane. I decided to go deep, not wide, because long game, no matter what kind of business you're in, is to become a thought leader or expert in that topic. So that when people come looking for somebody who does what you do, they come looking for you, not just for anybody. And it's happened 3 times in the last seven years, I guess. So 8 years, where people have come looking, they go, no, we know who you are. We heard about you. We want to book you. That's what you're after, that, your brand is so strong. You're thought of as a thought leader expert. They don't want just anybody who speaks on that. They want you.
That's great. Now, you mentioned a list of indicators or markers for depression and suicide. The person may be ambivalent or not very aware of them. Can you quickly share what those are?
Yeah. This is obviously not an exhaustive list, but top 3 in my mind for signs of depression.
Mhm.
Eat too much, can't eat, sleep too much, or can't sleep. They have trouble getting out of bed in the morning, so often late to work, school, but in the afternoon they rally almost like a different person. One you can actually see is they tend to let their personal hygiene go. So normally it used to be they're pretty well put together, and
Yeah.
today their hair's kind of dirty, clothes aren't quite so clean, maybe because they can't drag themselves out of bed to run a load of wash and take a shower.
Yeah.
Now the question always comes up, what do you say to somebody who either told you they're depressed or you believe they are? Let's start with what you don't say. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Turn that frown upside down. Have you tried joy? I know. The guy who said that to me, I said to him, look, unless you're talking about dishwashing liquid, I'm out of luck. What you do say is, I'm here for you and I mean it. I know you're not lazy or crazy or self-absorbed. I know that depression is a mental illness, but here's the good news. With time and treatment, it'll get better. I'll take the time. I'll help you get the treatment. And here's the difficult part. You have to ask them in no uncertain terms, are you having thoughts of suicide? Just like that. There's no wives' tale. You should never mention suicide in front of somebody who's depressed because it might give them the idea. Oh, yeah. Suicide. What a great idea.
Oh, I hadn't considered that one yet.
Yes, exactly. It never crossed my mind. Actually, the reverse is true. Mentioning the word suicide in front of somebody who's depressed and contemplating suicide actually lowers the risk because you've started the conversation.
Yes.
That's okay. So let's say, now what don't you say to somebody who admits they're suicidal? Well, you don't say you're looking for attention. You're being melodramatic. Nobody who talks about it ever does it. What you do say is, okay, do you have a plan? And if their plan is detailed, time, place, and method, you do your best to get them to a mental health facility simply for evaluation, maybe medication. And people ask me, when do you call the cops? If they're in immediate danger to themselves or somebody else, you got no choice. But bear in mind, in most states, that will get them a 3-day involuntary detention order. They'll be locked down in a psych ward for 3 days. The question came up one time, what if they got a plan, a suicide plan, but it's not detailed? Well, here's what I would do. I'd go, well, are you going to kill yourself? If they say no, I go, okay, great. Tell me why not. Make them give voice to whatever's keeping them here because something is keeping them here. And you can leverage that something. It's called a turning point in suicide prevention work.
And
You
definitely don't help them with the plan.
No. Yeah. And don't, yeah. Why did you Google it? Yeah. Oh man. It's well, and signs of, let's say they don't tell you they're suicidal. How would you know? Well, you catch them Googling death and dying or suicide. They talk about death and dying. Death and dying appears as a theme in their artwork or their music or their writing. They are getting their affairs in order, including especially giving away prized possessions, because they want to make sure those possessions go to the people they want them to go to when they're gone. Here's one that's counterintuitive and very dangerous. They've been depressed forever. Now they're happy for no reason. Well, you're happy because they're happy, but they may be happy because they've chosen time, place, method, and they know the pain is coming to an end. Because I believe suicide most often is not about wanting to kill yourself, simply wanting to end the pain.
Yeah.
So that's the 411.
Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic share. Very, very valuable, very informative. Thank you so much, Frank.
Sure.
You know, the story that I opened up the interview with, you know, that was with me. I was staying away from drugs, but my psychic pain was increasing nonetheless, despite it. It was just you know, whatever the reason, I was not accepting of my situation, and it's just life had become too painful.
Yep.
And I talked about it a lot. And I found myself talking about it. I was like, Tony, shut up about this shit already. You know, either pull the tree shit or get off the pot. You know, and thankfully, you know, I talked myself out of it, or, you know, however you want to frame it. But that was really great stuff. Thank you so much for that.
Sure.
Yeah, and I want to circle back on the TEDx talk.
Yeah.
When you first, okay, you did research on this topic on suicide prevention, and then soon thereafter you booked your first talk. How much time did it take, and were there any specific steps that you had to get to that you reached out for, or was your goal?
Well, I
in,
use the
in that
training.
process.
I use the training that I had to construct the keynote. The keynote is sort of like a giant TEDx talk. The TEDx is built like this. First third, maybe 5-6 minutes, is your backstory, your messes and stresses, all the crap you've been through.
Yeah.
The middle third is what you learned. And then the last third is, now what are you going to teach them? So I've often said to my students, your story is not a TED, and a TED is not your story. It's part of it. They want to know the messes and stresses, the backstory. How'd you get here? And then what'd you learn, all that crap? Now we're going to teach them. So keynotes like that. I go through my backstory, what qualifies me. I start off right away with, I know what you're thinking, comedian doing, suicide prevention work. How's that happen? So I give them that, tell them the horror story that was my great aunt's suicide when I was 4 years old. And then talk about my own personal mental health struggles. And then what I've learned in all that. And then the last segment is, okay, now here's what I'm going to teach you. Because the good news is 8 out of 10 people who are suicidal are ambivalent, 9 out of 10 give hints. I make the audience the hero in the piece. I say to them, you can make a difference. You can save a life, and you can do it by doing something as simple as what we're doing right here. And that is starting a conversation. So I am empowering them to save people, having given them the information they need to spot it and what to do. So that's a basic keynote. It's 45 minutes. I do 15 in Q&A, and then the individual chats afterwards when people don't want to share in front of everybody.
That is such great stuff that you're sharing with the audience, with me and the audience right now. I so appreciate it. Sure. I mean, even the formulaic stuff. I don't need Frank's course. Well, if he's giving you this stuff for free, I wonder what he gets you. What you get for what you pay for. But great stuff, man. This is fantastic. I love it.
Well, here's what you get. Most of TEDx coaching companies, and some that charge more than I do, you get one-on-one Zoom session. Everything after that's group sessions. I do an hour a week on Zoom, one-on-one with all my clients. We fill out 1 or 2 applications each week, and we work on our speaker marketing package, the one sheet and the website, video, get them ready. So when the TEDx posts, they can begin to leverage that to get some, more jobs at higher money. And in the application process, TED does not make it easy to find the application links, because we get a couple hundred people per event. They're trying to keep the numbers down, I think. So I find the application links.
But TEDx has an event which you go to when you speak at. That's the way it works, right?
X means local. So TEDx Nashville, TEDx Chicago. The big TED is Vancouver, BC, once a year for a week, as Bill Gates, Elon Musk. But the X means local, and there's 200 plus of those around the country.
Okay, now
1,200 in the world. So I find the application links, get together with my client for an hour a week, one-on-one. We fill them out. And the key, it seems to me, first hurdle is making it creative enough that it'll stop the scroll. Because if I am on the selection committee and I've got 100 applications to go through, I'm moving. I'm not looking for the first reason to book you. I'm looking at the first thing I can find not to book you, an audition.
Yeah.
So I work very hard on the title and subtitle, because if we can make the title sticky enough, it's a marketing pitch. One of my clients wrote a book called Sober Letters to My Drunken Self. It's in a 12-step program. It's about the emotional impact they don't tell you about generally in 12-step. 12 steps is very mechanical. But with alcoholism and drug addiction, there's stigma and shame, and they don't talk a lot about that. So that was what his talk was about. But the title is nebulous. Sober Letters to My Drunken Self. Okay, if I see that line, I'm slowing down. I'm going to read the subtitle and then the 3-line description, because it interests me.
Right.
Got to hook them like mental health and the orgasm, treat your depression single-handedly. I'm sure that slowed the scroll for a lot of people.
Right.
Now
so you want to be a bit vague, or maybe a lot vague in the opener, but then you narrow it down in your specificity.
Yeah, you hook them with the opener. I got a woman who had breast cancer, a very aggressive form, double mastectomy, survived 5 years, cancer-free right now. And her title was How Cancer Saved My Life. And the subtitle was, and How My Other Fears Almost Killed Me. So you read How Cancer Saved My Life. I'm slowing down because I need to know how that happened.
That's great.
So I work very hard on the creative part of it. And then if they get the audition, there's a couple of questions they always ask at the audition. One is, great idea, Frank. What are you going to teach the audience? So we have a document bullet pointed with the takeaways for the audience. What are they going to learn? They also ask you, if you quote a fact or figure, where did you get that percentage number? You have to have your links to any research you did because they're terrified of junk science.
Yeah.
So I have my clients prepare a sheet. When I sent my rough draft in to this latest TEDx, I also attached a document with all the links where I found the research, the mental health research. And then if you get to talk, then I help them construct it and practice it and see if we can't find somewhere they can practice it live. Like I always recommend, look, the Rotarians get together every week and they have a speaker every week and they give you 20 minutes, plenty of time to do your TED, and they give you lunch. So we try to find spots where they can do it before they go on stage at the TED. And then once they get it and it goes up on YouTube, as I mentioned, then we try to leverage it for more bookings, higher fees, sell books, whatever your goals happen to be.
Wow, what great stuff you're sharing, man. It's fantastic. Let's take a moment to hear from our sponsor, and we'll come right back with Frank King.
This episode of Self-Help Coaching is brought to you by Proficio. How's your financial health? Are you ready for emergencies? What if you actually had in you the wisdom of Benjamin Franklin? There's a reason why his face is on the $100 bill. Visit www.proficio.io. That's PERFICIO.io, where you can make certain that you're on the road to be financially independent no matter what happens.
You're listening to the Self-Help Coaching Podcast with me, your host, Tony Petrozza. And, previously when I came back from a break, I re-announced Frank King as the funny Frank King. But you know what? That's out. Because this stuff has been so incredible. I'm going to say the very valuable and informative Frank King. This has been really wonderful stuff. I mean, not on multiple levels, man. I mean, you're hitting all the spots, man. Great stuff.
Well, and for your entrepreneurs who are listening, because I do a number of podcasts for entrepreneurs, they go, well, 1/3 of entrepreneurs, 2 studies I read, 1/3 are depressed and suicidal.
I got to tell you something. All right. I'm basically a very positive person. I used to be an extremely negative person. People who knew me back then hardly recognize me now, and vice versa. I've been striving to launch my app, and I'm the head of a technological coaching company right now. I get frustrated sometimes. Even now, years later, I've even had the thought of suicide because of the frustrations, the disappointments, that I had. Now, fortunately, I laugh it right out of my head. But it can, if it landed somewhere at a greater perch, it might be more difficult. I've confided in this to a few confidants, and they were shocked. They're like, "You, Tony? You, Mr. Positive?
Tony P? No.
Hey. I'm thinking of suicide." But it's true. So, man, that resonates.
And I tell entrepreneurs that there's some things in the speaking business that apply across the board for entrepreneurs, I believe. One great thing about a TEDx is it forces the speaker to pick one idea, because that's what TED is about. An idea worth spreading, not 2, not 3, and to be very concise, not a thesis, 18 minutes. That's not a lot of time. So what you've done is you've focused them. You've had them niche their speaking to one topic. Again, pick a lane, become a thought leader. And I tell entrepreneurs, look, I looked around my town at all my friends in the Chamber of Commerce, picked out 2 who are super successful, completely different businesses, auto body shop, another guy owned 3 radio stations. What do these 2 guys have in common? And it hit me right away. They do one thing and they do it extremely well. No side hustles, no distractions. So that's when I decided, okay, I'm just going to be a suicide prevention speaker, because I believe whatever business you're in, the riches are in the niches. I don't want if I'm hiring a networking speaker, I don't want somebody who's got a half a dozen keynotes and a wide variety of topics. I want the guy who it appears that's all he or she does. Networking speeches. Used to be you could get away with being a jack of all trades in the speaking business, but things have changed. Dollars have gotten tighter. They want somebody who's dead on target. And that's why I have a landing page for construction, one for agriculture, one for healthcare, so that when the meeting planner lands there, that's all they see. You join the conversation in the client's mind. A young woman said to me, I said, how'd you find me? She goes, well, Frank, you've got a great SEO. I typed in suicide prevention speaker, agriculture. You came up. She goes, now I'm reading your first paragraph, and I swear, she said, it sounds like this. I know, I wrote it, but it says, hey, I bet you're here because you've been selected to pick just the right suicide prevention for the next agriculture function. She said to me, I'm thinking to myself, how does he know that? But you're joining the conversation. When she lands there, she doesn't know I speak on construction and veterinarians and dentists. All she knows is I'm the suicide prevention speaker, agriculture. And again, I think if you're an entrepreneur, you want to be known for one thing and do that extremely well. So when people think I need advertising radio station, no, John Malkay, got 3 stations, very successful. Todd's Auto Body, the guy is backed up 6 weeks. I pulled a bumper off my car, leaving my garage, and I got a bungee cord to back on. So I take it in, they look it over, and they go, okay, well, we got you an appointment 6 weeks from now. What? That's how busy they are. Yeah. So, but that's because that's all Todd does, period.
So you really espouse, and it seems like you really teach in your course, how critical marketing is and how they need to niche market and just market in an effective way.
You become, so when they come looking for, whether it's auto body work or to advertise a radio station or whatever it is you're an entrepreneur in, that's all you're known for. You're not talking about Bitcoin. You're not talking about, I want a specialist if I'm spending that kind of money.
Yeah.
Somebody, that's all they do all day long. They eat it, drink it, sleep it, So it's, and that's what I offer my clients is, there's a big construction company called Turner Construction, the biggest company in the country, construction company, and Tishman Speyer is a developer. I did 7 keynotes in 2.5 days in Manhattan, in the building, under construction. And the guy I'm talking to, he goes, how did you find me? He goes, Frank, it was just, I typed in suicide prevention, construction. You came up. I typed it a different way. You came up. And I typed it a third way. And I'm like, okay, screw it. And I told my team, this is the guy. How do you know? Just trust me. This is the guy. That's what you want. You want to be the guy or the gal who, you're obviously the person they need right now. And again, whether you're a speaker, auto body shop, radio station owner, whatever it is, again, I understand why people have side hustles. Things are tough. I made that mistake in the last recession, 2007, 8, and 9. I tried to diversify. I did all kinds of little things. I should have gone deeper into the speaking and comedy rather than go wide.
Wow.
Yeah, I should have never, tried to, I became an auctioneer and I became a real estate agent.
And that will surprise people.
Yeah, this time around, and this, when the recession came along or close to it, this time I thought, all right, I guess it was when Obama left office and the recession. Yeah, I went deep, not wide. I didn't do, and people are constantly offering me, it's passive income, do in your spare time. No. I don't know about you. I suffer from SOS, shiny object syndrome. Really? I can make money? Really? I can make money?
Yeah.
You have to put my blinders on.
Yeah.
Because every minute, I tell them, look, every minute, will only be a couple hours a week, but that's a couple of hours. I'm not marketing what I do best.
Right. Yeah.
But I understand the seduction. I understand the shiny object syndrome.
You're preaching to the choir, brother, because I've learned this the hard way, man. What a person needs to do is focus. And what was that other thing? Oh yeah, focus. That's what a person needs to do. What their thing is.
Part of the problem, Tony, is oftentimes entrepreneurs can do a great number of things, very talented in a lot of areas. The question is, should they?
Yeah, right. Yes,
Yeah,
I
no.
know. Yeah. A little diversity might not hurt. Where's that Chang
Yeah.
object again?
Now, bear in mind, I still do stand up on cruise ships. I do about 12 weeks a year on cruise ships, stand up comedy.
That's great.
Well, but I do it during the summer when people aren't usually conventioning. So I'm not interfering with my corporate work, or the holidays. And I teach TEDx. But the TEDx, it's and the speaking, I mean, TEDx is speaking. Friend of mine, a coach, I wasn't paying her, but we were friends. This is right before the recession. I'm sorry, right before the pandemic. She goes, Frank, listen, I get the feeling you're teaching people how to get a TEDx and you're not charging them, and that shit's got to stop. Some of the best business advice I ever got. She goes, you need to be charging them. You need a website that's only, I have two websites, the Mental Health Comedian and the TEDx coach, your TEDx coach. They're separate. She goes, you need a website and you start charging. Well, how much should I charge? She goes, okay, are you sitting down? She goes, I did a little research. There's a company run by a guy named Taylor Conroy, charges $6,800. So I think you should be a little under him. You should charge $5,997. And you're offering an hour a week, individual, not group. So you're less money, more attention, personal attention. I said, okay, you're on. And I had the website built, started advertising, charged them. I've got 25 or 26 TEDx coaching clients right now. So, and two of them just got a TEDx this week.
That's great.
So, yeah. So it's,
I also heard you have an OnlyFans account too. Did I hear that one right?
yes, I do. Let me, yeah, no, man, that is cold. Well, and as part of my mental health, I have a self-care plan, which I recommend whether you have mental health issues or not. I believe everybody should have I realized at the beginning of the pandemic that my mentally ill friends and I were well positioned to survive the pandemic because we all have a self-care plan.
Yeah.
And I did virtual keynotes the entire time during the pandemic to neurotypical people called Social Distancing and Staying Sane. Don't worry about your mentally ill friends, because we have so I taught, normal people how to create a self-care plan because of all the uncertainty, and the upheaval. People were situationally depressed. They probably didn't recognize it because how would you know?
Right.
If you've never, if you've never been depressed, how the hell would you know you're depressed? So, somebody called me up and said, hey man, how you surviving the pandemic? I go, look, I've had 2 aortic valve replacements, a double bypass, a heart attack, 3 stents. I live with 2 mental illnesses, and I lost to a duck puppet on the old Star Search. This is not the worst thing that's ever happened to me.
That's great.
Well, here's a comedy corollary, or comedy. In comedy, they say comedy is tragedy plus time. So, you take something tragic and you, like you said, you process it through your brain, my brain, and out comes something, funny.
All right. Oh, so now everyone is listening, but you got to see this picture that Frank is holding up, man. It's a shredded body.
Yeah. That's my third bodybuilding contest. That's 8% body fat. That's my own.
Is that really you? I thought it might have been Photoshopped. That's really
no, that's me. That's my own.
Guys, listen, you got to go to YouTube and check out the channel and check out.
Yeah, look at that package, man. Look at that banana hammock.
Oh my God! Now, I can tell you stuffed something down his Speedo.
Yeah, it's a baked potato.
That's great, man.
That was my third bodybuilding contest.
That's incredible, man. Holy! So you just added a whole new facet to it. That's incredible.
Well, part of my, I exercise every day, and that's part of my self-care plan. That, I think
great.
When you have a job, like an entrepreneur, I believe you should have a hobby completely different, that has nothing to do with what you do for a living. And, I could go into the gym and never speak to anybody, and I speak for a living. So it's, it's a completely different, activity. And I can see the progress, take pride in it, go to the contest. There's a lot of social that goes on with the social life with the contest. People compete year over year. And I'm old. So I'm kind of the clown. I'm like the clown prince of bodybuilding here locally. And so
He by the way, listener, Frank lives out in Oregon. If you go to an Oregon bodybuilding competition, look for the funny one.
yes, I'm always on stage, because you're really not supposed to say anything. But one in the last contest I was in, the judges somehow got their number screwed around in a particular category. So there are 4 of us on stage. And the guy at the far end is he's just amazing. He's already won another category that day. And so they announced, okay, they do 4th, 3rd, 2nd, 1st. So they announced 4th place, and it was him. And we're all looking at each other. And I went, wait a minute, 4th place, that's mine. And the judges looked down and go, oh, we're sorry. And sure enough, they reversed it, and I got 4th place. So, it's those moments where you can add a little levity. I opened up for Randy Travis twice, 2 nights, 1 weekend, Michigan in the summer, 5,000 people per show.
But he's a singer and you're a comedian, so that type of thing. Okay.
And 5,000 people. Now, Randy has a band and lyrics and music and backup singers. I've got a microphone.
Yeah.
And 5,000 people.
Right.
I didn't even break a sweat. But standing in my underwear in that picture in front of 100 people, and I'm dancing around for a minute, flexing, I was terrified.
Well, I can imagine, man. Talk about exposing yourself. Wow stuff. Unfortunately, we only have we have just one final segment with Frank, so we'll take our last break and our unfortunate last segment with Frank right after. We'll come back for this sorry and last segment with Frank King.
This episode of Self-Help Coaching is brought to you by Perficio. Perficio learns more about you as you make progress and then uses that information to help you even more. It is quasi-AI. Visit www.perficio.io. That's PERFICIO.io, where you can be helped by something that learns more about you, because that is the difference that makes the difference.
You are listening to the Self-Help Coaching Podcast with me, your host, Tony Petrozza. We're having an incredible conversation with Frank King. And Frank, I'd like to shift gears a little bit and get really serious for a moment. How did you come to write for The Tonight Show for 20 years?
When I started doing comedy full time, I announced to my wife or my girlfriend, now my wife, we're going on the road. Leno was simply the permanent guest host for Johnny Carson.
Yeah.
He was the one guy.
Yeah.
And so Johnny would pull up on a Friday night and go, I'm taking next week off, which meant Jay had 4 monologues the following week, 18 jokes a monologue that he had to come up with over the weekend. So he started hiring road comics like me to fax in jokes when he needed them. So I'd fax in 12, 2 dozen jokes. And then when he got the Tonight Show for real, got the job himself, he kept only a couple of us contract labor types, writing at a distance. And I was one of them. And I continued to pump in 12 or 24 jokes a day. And I was averaging 2 in the monologue. I had 2 on his very first monologue, but I was averaging about 2 a week. And he's a great guy. When I had my first aortic valve replacement, the first phone call I got when I got into a regular room was from Leno. And in our 4th book on men's mental health, the 4th book, I called Jay and asked him, would he blurb the cover? Because we want some help marketing it, maybe bump it up to a bestseller on Amazon. And he gave us a blurb for the cover, and we were a bestseller in 3 categories on Amazon that day. So really, really nice guy.
Wow. Fantastic. And I was a little facetious there, of course. But now I am going to be, okay, I guess it's the same amount of facetiousness. You came close. You told about your all these relatives that died of suicide and how you came close. Now, can you tell us what the barrel of your gun tasted like?
Yes.
Yeah.
Relief.
Oh, wow! What a surprise that is to people.
Yeah.
I would have said gun oil.
Gun oil. A little. No. Several people have asked me that, and man, when I go relief,
yeah,
it staggers them. because
Yeah.
that, it was the end of the pain was coming.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Yep.
Frank, I have had many, many wonderful guests with all sorts of valuable and useful, immediately accessible information. I gotta say, no one has been more accessible or useful or important than you and this conversation we had. I
Well,
am
thank you.
so grateful to you coming on and to meet you, sir. Really great stuff. And how do people get a hold of you?
Oh, I've got a website. It's or as we say down south, the mental health comedian, thementalhealthcomedian.com. If you go there and put an email address in, I narrate the books for Audible, the 4 books on men's mental health. And the first one, if you put an email address in, is free, unabridged, download an MP3. So you can get the first book for free.
Wow, a free audio book. Listen, are you listening, people? You listen, get this guy's free audio book. All it's going to cost you is your email address. I'd say it's a fair deal, man.
Yep. It's
and you've got 3 other books too. Fantastic. And you also have the TEDx website, I understand.
Yes, yourtedxcoach.com.
Frank, I've had a few guests that I'm like, okay, I've got to do this guy or this woman's program. You're the latest person on that list, and I'll be talking to you down the road about it because you kind of hooked me, sir. And I'm going to check out your websites, and we'll be talking about it because I see the value. I see the value of being a TEDx talker, and you kind of hooked me. Great stuff, man. You have been wonderful. Do you have any final remarks for the audience?
Yes. Remember this: suicide is the most preventable cause of death on the planet. With the information we've given you today, you can make a difference. You can save a life, and you can do it by doing something as simple as Tony and I are doing, and that is starting a conversation.
Great stuff, Frank. And remember, everyone, we're all responsible for ourselves, and we could all use a little help. And with that, thank you so much for joining me and Frank King on the Self-Help Coaching Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the Self-Help Coaching Podcast, where insights, attitudes, and methods for success get illuminated. Learn what leaders and change workers have done and are doing now to create magnificent futures. Remember to visit our website at self-helpcoaching.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Self-Help Coaching Podcast.